Do you want to know more about the interior surface from the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool? I mean, I sure do, so let's talk about it here for a second. A lot of media outlets have asked me to comment on what exactly happened to the interior surface here of the reflecting pool. And so far, there's just almost no publicly available information for me to base any kind of decisions on at all here. And so really all I can say is that with the plan to drain the pool and perform some repairs, I feel like soon we're going to get some information, some new pictures and videos and things like that, understand a little more about what went wrong, how widespread the potential problem areas are. Look, I am not a certified Rhino systems installer. I don't even play one on TV, but I do have some professional experience with similar aquatic coatings. And, I am Swimming Pool Steve after all, and I'm very interested in learning more about exactly what has happened to the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool and exactly how extensive or systemic potentially this damage is. In order to understand more about that, I had to understand more about the technical process that they use and the products that they use to do it, which was very hard to find. There isn't really publicly available information to the fullest extent yet by any means, but I did find from the Department of the Interior an official bid at some point, or some sort of technical document which explains exactly why this is a no-bid contract. No-bid contract in the sense that the technical points that the installer is going to need to have combined with the timeline that it needs to meet requires this situation where basically we got to go like tomorrow to get started, is essentially what it's described. But also it stipulated some of the specific points that are going to be addressed during the repair and installation process. One of the first things that stood out to me on the list of things it will be addressing was the surface profile of 3 to 5, CSP 3 to 5, which is going to be achieved of shot blasting the floor of the interior surface. But further, it stipulated sand blasting of the vertical walls. So that was a previous question that I had about the mechanical preparation they had done of the substrate layer before they applied any new surfaces here with the new interior surface system that was being installed. So not only did they address the mechanical preparation with shot blasting, they differentiated between floor and walls, which is significant in my opinion because it would require a different mechanical preparation to adhere any surface layers on top of that. Another point was backer rod installation and Rhino CCW installation. And the CCW, as far as I can discern, refers to a cold cure waterproofing system, or part of a waterproofing system more accurately. In layman's terms, sometimes you have to joint two pieces of concrete together or two dissimilar surfaces, and you have to do so in a flexible way. And if there's a large gap, you would use a backer rod, which is just basically a closed cell foam product, and this means that it doesn't readily absorb water. You use that to essentially fill space, and then you apply some sort of sealant layer over top of that. Rhino 11-35 refers to a product that is available from Rhino that would likely be used as part of a reinforcing of difficult areas. It has a very, very high ability to stretch. That's what's unique about that product. ASTM D412 for Tensile elongation rates this product at around 300 to 350% of elongation or stretchability before it fails. Rhino 405 epoxy, which is like a gel product or a trowel grade product, might be part of that CCW system, but for sure the 406 epoxy is definitely one of the main components used here for the interior surface. You might have seen through pictures and videos of the interior surface process that it wasn't a single pass, like just it went right from gray to blue. There was an intermediary layer, possibly multiple layers there, and one of them was a lighter blue product, and very likely that is the epoxy layer that is the 406 Rhino product. Rhino 406 epoxy technical documentation states that this product has a working time of 10 to 15 minutes. It's tack-free in 2 to 3 hours. You can return to service in 24 hours, and a full cure is achieved in 72 hours. Temperature and humidity will both affect the tack-free and the final cure strength time windows. And the hotter and drier the weather is, the more it will accelerate this, versus the cooler and more damp, the slower that process will be. And then, of course, we have the Rhino Pipe Liner 5000, probably the one that you've heard of in all of this, and that should be the top layer, which has, different chemical and physical properties than the sub-layers. A few key points before I move on here would be the 406 epoxy layer was specified at 5 mils approximately, and the Rhino Pipe Liner 5000 layer was specified at 100 mils thickness. This document also referred to another step, which was sealing the horizontal coping joint, as well as some testing that these products were going to undergo during this process. So some of the testing included thickness verification, pretty self-explanatory there. Adhesion testing, which essentially, if you would imagine taking a dolly, something you move a refrigerator with, and glue it to the surface, and then come back once the glue's set, and now just kind of crank on that dolly until the surface adhesion fails, and now you can measure that, and that essentially would give you an idea what an adhesion test would look like. I found this interesting that it also specified that it would include sparks holiday testing or high voltage holiday testing. And if you're not sure what that means, it refers to a process where they're going to apply a voltage to the interior surface, and then they're going to measure that for leaks to ground. Now, if you don't know much about electric theory, that might not be making sense to you, but essentially just picture somebody who looks like they're doing metal detecting. And instead of metal detecting and listening for the sound of, oh, there's metal in the ground here, there's a voltage being applied to the surface that they're inspecting, and they're listening for an auditory indicator that current is escaping the system. It should be electrically isolated, but if there's any pinholes or deficiencies of any kind, then it wouldn't be electrically isolated. The substrate that the material is attached to would be providing a source to ground, and this completes the electric circuit, allows current to flow, and allows them to detect it. So basically, it's just a really cool and high-tech way that they would use to measure and detect any imperfections or pinholes in the interior surface application. I have not seen any official data released publicly about any of these testings, but I did think it was interesting that they were all specifically referenced in this document. On June 22nd, the president and CEO of Rhino Linings released a statement on their website that was stating that they are aware of the reports of a separation of the interior surface lining. And they state specifically in this that they believe it to be on a surface layer versus through to the waterproofing epoxy layer below that. The differentiation between a surface coat failure and a waterproofing substrate layer failure is very significant because it immediately starts to answer some questions that we've all had from the beginning. I know I certainly have, which is if their statement from the manufacturer of these products was to say that all layers have been cut, damaged, delaminated, shot with a space laser, whatever the problem is, they're not working anymore. They didn't say that. That would be a different situation. What they said is there is a waterproofing base layer which is intact. There is a different layer which isn't that, which has a problem. That's essentially what they've said there, but even that information is significant. Some conclusions I can draw. This is not a substrate preparation issue. If it were, then the base layer would have detached from the substrate. That's not what the report says. It is not a water vapor or hydrostatic pressure issue, because if it were, again, the base layer would have likely become detached from the substrate layer, but assuming that's still intact and attached to the substrate and the problem exists somehow on the surface layer or in between the different layers, then that indicates a different mode of failure. So still waterproof, still bonded to the substrate layer. So what is this mode of failure? And that becomes the question here. And hopefully that's a question that can be answered in the coming days here as more pictures and videos become available. Let's talk about some of the specifications of a few of the products that have been mentioned that will be used as part of the renovation project here. Rhino 406 epoxy has a very high compressive strength, something around 12 to 14,000 psi compressive strength. The tensile strength of the 406 epoxy is between 7 and 8,000 psi. Interesting, the tensile elongation test for this product is around 4.5%, which can be interpreted as saying it's not very flexible. It's a pretty hard, pretty rigid product, and that will become more apparent as we look at some more of the products used here. Rhino 11-35P, P for polyurea, is a very interesting product that was at least specified to be used as part of the remediation and installation of the new interior surface. It has a tensile strength rating of around 1600 to 1900 psi. But what's very interesting is the tensile elongation rating. This comes in at somewhere between 300 to 350%. And if you remember the 406 epoxy, that was only 4.5%. So you can see there's a vast difference in the physical performance of these two products. If you're having trouble picturing the difference, just picture that the 406 epoxy is very stiff and inflexible, and if it were to flex, then it would break, whereas the other product, the 11-35P, is very flexible, like an elastic band, and you could stretch it to 3 times its length before it's at risk of breaking. So as you can see, there's a vast difference in the performance of these products, and we haven't even talked about Rhino Pipe Liner 5000 yet, which is kind of the one that everybody's talking about. So a direct comparison right away is what's the tensile strength rating for the Rhino Pipe Liner 5000, and it's about 3200 to 3500 psi, so very appreciable. Tensile strength of the Pipe Liner 5000 product is about 800 psi, but what's interesting here is that the tensile elongation is about 50 to 60%. The initial product was only 4.5%, and then we jumped all the way up to 300 to 350% elongation before failure, and now the final layer here, the Pipe Liner 5000 product at 50% to 60% elongation before failure. So right away, we're seeing this is not paint at all. Like, there's multiple different layers all interacting in physical and chemical ways, and that's why this is so difficult to just put a pin in and say, oh, here's what happened, because there's not enough information available, and there's so many different interacting components here which could potentially have been the cause of the failure. So it's far too early to say, but now I think we have a much better idea in the next coming days when we start to get information through media about, oh, here's what's wrong, here's how systemic it was, here's what's deficient, here's what's not deficient. You should have a much better understanding now of what exactly is going on in the different products and layers that they're talking about here. When digging through the technical notes for the Rhino Pipe Liner 5000 product, I saw an interesting piece of information that relates directly to so many different media, and people were asking me, well, how do you cut the liner? It's been cut. How does that happen? Would that be hard? Would that be impossible? And it was very hard for me to articulate to people on the spot exactly what that would be like. But here's a number that you should know. One of the numbers that is measured here as part of how strong and durable this product is the Shore D rating. This is essentially the resistance to indentation, and the Shore D rating for the Pipe Liner 5000 product is 65 plus or minus 5. And another product that you might be familiar with, or more products that have a similar hardness rating for a Shore D, is a golf ball and a hard hat. So both of those two products have a Shore D rating of 65. So there we go. We don't have all the answers, but I think we all have a little bit more information than we did before. If you've got more information, go ahead and add it to the comments. I would love to learn and know more about this. We will probably see in the coming days, and definitely in the coming weeks, there should be opportunity for us to see exactly what went wrong, how extensive the problems are, what the repair and remediation process is going to look like, and how long is it going to be before the Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool is up and running and doing its thing. If you found this information helpful, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my YouTube channel here, and you can check out my website, swimmingpoolsteve.com.